everyone. This is Niharika and I welcome you on behalf of YLCC. Today we have with us Shuban and Kaushiki Singh from Jindal Global University, who have been declared as the winners of the Sports Law Arbitration Moot 2023, organized by LawInSports along with the Court of Arbitration for Sport. With this victory, they have become the first Asian team to win this competition, and we are extremely delighted to have you both here to share your experience. So welcome and many congratulations to you. I would like to request you to introduce yourself first, and then we'll talk about the competition experience. Please go, Kaushiki.
Hi, my name is Kaushiki, and I've just finished my second year at Jindal Global Law School. I'll be going to for third year. And mostly my areas of interest are ADR and IPR, a recent interest that I've developed, and of course, sports law after doing this moot.
Hello there, my name is Shuban and I am now entering the third year of my law school. With regards to areas of interest, I think it's quite evident from after doing a sports law competition that I'm quite keen in sports law. So I wish to make a career in international arbitration itself going forward.
All right. First things first, please describe us the journey of the competition from the very beginning, the self-preparation, the memorial preparation, the mentorship stage running through all the rounds.
Thank you. I think one of the great experiences that I had in this moot is the fact that I got to network a lot in the end. And the preparation and everything was definitely incredible, but at the same time, very exhausting because initially I was really hesitant about doing a moot. This was something that I'd taken up as something that, you should do a moot as a law student in your tenure. So I took up this moot and I knew I was signing up for like a 5-month-long journey. So it was quite exhausting, to be honest, but at the same time, with every step, I think there was a lot of learning that was there. Firstly, I think we started off with our memo qualifier, which was only 16 teams making the cut. So it was definitely the most important stages. While prepping for the memo, I think most of our background research went into that because we knew during our oral rounds, we won't get enough time to do a lot of research. So whatever research that needed to be done had to be done in that stage itself. So I think compared to other teams, we did get a shorter period of time because we registered a little late. But what we did is essentially focused and prioritized our research areas really well and divided the work, most importantly, as efficiently as we can, because we did have some research moot questions there. So we divided that and we accordingly did that. After that, once our oral round started, I think as this was my first moot, so I was really nervous about the part where it involved the oral rounds, because I was really nervous as a lot of people said that once they start grilling you, it gets a little scary. So definitely Shuban's previous experience in FDI helped a lot. So there were a lot of tips that he gave me. But apart from that, I think one thing that really helped me was a lot of practice rounds that we did before doing the actual oral rounds. I think that is really important. It definitely gives you that confidence on the day when you are actually doing your rounds. So that fear of, the judges asking you questions, if that is done before, I think you really know how to go about it as a first-time mooter. And also because there's so much research to do, you essentially get a picture of where you are essentially lacking, and then you can just focus on those particular areas and then go ahead with that. And I think the biggest challenge was to shift from online to offline mode. I think our initial rounds, oral rounds as well, were online. So once we went to the semis and finals, we had to completely change our strategy with regards to how we're going to deal with oral rounds. So I think things get a little tougher when you just have to do it in person, because you need to ensure that eye contact and how you present yourself, a lot of things change. So I think that was there. And yeah, apart from that, I think coordinating well with your teammate is also really important. I think something that the judges also pointed out a lot of times during the rounds, in fact, multiple judges, that they do pay attention to those details, how you coordinate with your teammate, and you're not just two people saying two separate speeches, but it should like sound in a cohesion. So I think, yeah, these were a few key things that I went through my journey.
So yeah, just to add on to that, I believe in general, when someone is studying for law, it's quite important for one to even be doing moot court competitions, because I have done another moot court competition before this, that was FTI. And I believe through these experiences, you get to brainstorm more real problems and you get a taste of what it feels like to be a counsel for a party. A lot of time that is missing when we are only learning legal theory or case laws in classrooms. So when you actually need to sit and look at a set of facts and then see if those really apply to the cases that you're dealing with, that's when you're really applying yourself. And that's quite important. And I feel like that process continued throughout. So one reason why I felt like this was much tougher as compared to FTI or other competitions that I've even heard of is because we had two sets of moot problems. So for our online stage, we had a completely different set, which was dealing with anti-doping violations. And for our semi-finals and finals, we had an entirely different case with regards to the FIFA DRC and disputes within FIFA itself. So with regards to that, we had to make completely new memorials twice and also prepare for two different submissions for that purpose itself. So these were two very, very different and separate areas of law within sports law itself. So I feel like we got a very good understanding of the different areas of laws within sports law itself. While we talk about sports law being a niche, it's quite wide with this regard. And I think we really need to give a big thanks to professors like Sean Starr, who really helped us out. And Jindal that way has a lot of professors and faculty who could help you out with competitions. In fact, even Jindal's previous team had made it to the semi-final level. And the participants from those rounds did help us out with our practice rounds. So even before we got to the stages where we had to give our rounds in front of judges, we knew who we were talking to. And one thing that we also felt was that our rounds were not judged by mere advocates or academics. These were actual CAS arbitrators who have judged and adjudicated such rounds several times in the past. So that's why we felt like the amount of reality or how it or the procedure that was followed was practically the same that would be followed in any other CAS hearing. So it was quite an in-depth grilling real experience, which makes it even more special for the fact that we won.
Definitely does. What was your strategy for dealing with the unforeseen questions, if we can call it that? Because you don't really know what question is going to be thrown at you. While preparing, all we can do is assume certain questions, right? While keeping in mind that there are going to be times when we are not going to be prepared for whatever question we are being asked. So how did you manage in those times?
I think one of the most daunting parts of any moot is just preparing for that stage where you just mentally prepare yourself for any questions. And I think one of the things that our seniors and other Professor Sean also told us that if you research well, you will be confident enough to take questions. So I think one tip that I would essentially give to anyone would be that if you do a major chunk of your research while you're preparing for your memo, most of your work is done there, because during your oral rounds, it's a time crunch. You don't essentially get much time to again revise all the research that you've done before. So I think while you're doing research, read a lot as much as you can. And of course, there's some questions that you can't prepare essentially beforehand. So a good part about this moot was essentially that slam is such a competition where, as Shuban pointed out before, that these are all experienced arbitrators. So they multiple times they just pointed to us that whenever they're going to ask us questions, they're always going to be about our arguments itself and not just merely to throw us off or anything like that. So we were at peace that they are not going to ask us any irrelevant question just to test how well we are calm and composed. It was going to be relevant, of course. But I think one question out of all the rounds that I had was during the final rounds, and the arbitrator had ended up asking something really factual, which was not even given in the facts. So I think even though it threw me off, I think because I had read a lot, and football in general is not something that I'm follow a lot, but because I read a lot, I just managed to make up something that was out of practical knowledge. So I think as long as you read a lot, research a lot, you will be fine. And of course, there will be questions that you're not prepared for, but you'll end up giving an answer which is practical enough to, answer the judge. So yeah, that of course. And yeah, that's it.
So I think the biggest challenge that one faces when you're asked a question, regardless of whether you know the answer or not, is to immediately blurt out an answer to almost seem as if you know the answer. And I think that's the biggest mistake that you can do in any of your rounds. Because if you do not know the answer, then the arbitrators are smart enough to know that you do not know the answer, you're trying to make up something. So it's very important to stop your urge to answer immediately. Take a second, take a few seconds, think about the question and then answer. Because I think, may that be in mooting or may that be in counseling in future as well, your credibility completely depends on how much thought you have given behind what you say. And your word is what defines how credible you are. So if you're ready to just blurt out an answer without giving it a second thought, regardless of whether the answer is right or wrong, the judge is going to question your credibility. And therefore, it's extremely important to think about what you're saying before you say it. I think coming from a very adversarial legal system like India, we have this instinct to suddenly go and give an answer. So for me, the biggest challenge was to keep that down, to wait a second, probably think, and probably even speak a little slower as well, so that the judges understand what I'm saying. And what I genuinely feel is that if we take some time, think as to what the answer could be, then the quality of answer that we give increases by a lot. And a lot of times, I think there was one instance in which there was a reference made by a judge, by an arbitrator to a particular case. And that case didn't happen to be in front of me at that very moment. I did vaguely remember the facts of the case, but not entirely so. So at that point, I could have gone with my vague memory and given out an answer, or probably taken a minute to go through my file and look for the case. And I chose to take a minute, which meant pin drop silence in the room for that 15, 20 seconds. But I think that's a better strategy because then at least I know exactly what I'm talking about. So my answer is that much more coherent and consistent with my other arguments. So for any mooter, my recommendation would be take your time to think. It's not about how many arguments you make, it's about the quality of arguments that you make.
Definitely makes sense. What was the most noticeable difference according to you in the national and the world rounds?
So I think one of the things that were part of as the rules of the competition was the teams were kept anonymous. So with every stage that we had with regards to oral rounds, we didn't know who our team was and which country they were representing. But initially, the first round I think that we had was against NUHS because that was the only Indian team that had made to the top 16. So even after that, when we went to the quarters, we did have an international team with us, but we didn't unfortunately know who they were or which region they were representing. So we had regionals essentially, not national rounds. But I think one of the major difference that we spotted was when we went to the semi-finals and finals, because that was in person and there we actually got to interact with them. And we had one team from Singapore. They were essentially a backup team because Team Kenya couldn't make, unfortunately, because of their visa issues. So Singapore had come as a backup team and they were the other Asian team there. And we saw that one of the teammates were essentially a doping control officer already while pursuing law. So you can understand that they were already at an advanced level than us. And thankfully, we didn't have the doping scene for the finals because then essentially they would have that edge. But even then, we realized that a lot of people were quite senior to us. The Belgium team that we had in finals was comprised of 4th and 5th year students, and we were just like 2nd year law students. So everyone was really surprised that we were too young to be probably in that competition. But I think that also helps a lot that in a room of people where you have such experienced competitors and obviously arbitrators and advocates, you tend to learn a lot. So I think that was one of the major differences that I found during the competition.
So just to add on to that, something that I've generally noticed is that teams from Asia are very well researched. Even the memorials that we get from Asian teams are very meticulously made and very well researched. However, I feel like what we lack in Asia is delivery. And I don't think we give enough importance to the way we deliver our arguments. When we went for this competition and we faced off against a European team in the finals, we realized that they had given much more importance to delivery and in the manner in which they made their arguments, the way they tried to use certain emotional statements also to make those arguments that much more stronger, or allow for those arguments to stick with the judges. It's, again, as I said earlier as well, it's not about the number of arguments that you can make, but how many arguments stick finally. So one thing that we really understood at this competition was that European universities put in much more effort and time into moot court competitions as compared to Asians or Indian universities. And even, for example, the two European teams that had come to the competition had come with a coach, and we were just two kids who had flown from India. And that's something that I've generally noticed at these competitions as well, that the amount of preparation that European teams give for delivery is much more than Indian or other Asian teams. And that's, I think, an area where we can develop in India, working on our style of delivery, working on improving the nuance in which we make our arguments. It's not really important to blurt out every fact that you know. You're not trying to tell the other person that you know what you're talking about. You're trying to convince them as to why you should believe what you're telling.
Right, that was a wonderful session. Thank you for being here and interacting with us. I am very sure this session is going to be immensely helpful for everyone watching it. I, on behalf of YLCC, wish you all the best for your very bright future ahead. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.